message this morning on grace that transforms. Thank you, Boen.
Good morning and happy Sabbath, everyone. Just before I come here, Olivia told me, Boen, you speak loudly, you speak too soft. And with Gio's help, I think we should be okay. I hope you all can hear me rightly. Well, from the songs that we sang, you can figure out that the topic today is about grace, right? Especially grace that transforms. The question now is, what is grace? When I prepared this, firstly I look up that Oxford Dictionary. Yeah, Oxford Dictionary. Wow, that writing is too small. I think I have to go this way to see. Okay. Oxford Dictionary, but in the theological definitions, it says that grace is the free and unmerited favor or assistance of God, especially in the salvation of sinners or bestowing blessings. And the next definition is grace is a divine power that generates, sanctifies, and inspires virtuous intentions. So that's grace according to Oxford Dictionary. I'll be using a lot of slides, so it will help you to read along. Hopefully, will help you to internalize better than just hearing it from me. Also, my pronunciation also sometimes is not good. Okay, the next one. Let's now see what Ellen White says about grace. The first one is, grace is an attribute of God exercised toward undeserving human beings. So grace is an attribute of God and given to undeserving human beings. And the next one is, the grace of God alone has the power to make us pure. The next one, I would like to read from the most important guide in our life, which is the Bible, right? First one is from Ephesians 2, verse 8 to 9. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourself. It is the gift of God. And verse 9, not of works, lest anyone should boast. Further from Titus 2 verse 11, it says that, for the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men. Firstly, we see that salvation is a gift from God, emphasizing that it's not something we earn through our own works. This underscores that humility in recognizing our dependence on divine grace. And secondly, Titus assures us that this grace is available to everyone, highlighting its universal nature. Consider how this grace works within us, enabling us to achieve more than we can imagine, as mentioned in the Ephesians 3:20. Now to him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us. So what's that power? It's grace. Okay? Now, from all those key points, we can conclude 5 key points, right? The first one is grace is free and unmerited gift. And the second one is grace given toward undeserving being. And it is given to all men. Grace is a divine power. And grace can transform us. So, from those 5 points, I think we can make one sentence key points. That is, grace is free and unmerited gift given towards undeserved being universally. It is divine power that transforms. That's one sentence of those 5 key points. Let's now look at one by one. Starting with God's grace is a gift. See, when someone gives something to me, what options do I have? It's only 2, isn't it? Whether we received it or reject it. So since God's grace is a gift, we can only receive it or reject it. We can't earn it. We can't buy it. We can't purchase it. We can only receive it if we want to. Now look at this verse from Romans 11, verse 6. And if by grace, then it is no longer of works. Otherwise, grace is no longer grace. But if it is of works, it is no longer grace. Otherwise, work is no longer work. So Romans 11 verse 6 emphasizes this beautifully. This verse highlights the distinction between grace and works. So it is important to understand that grace, by its nature, cannot coexist with the idea of earning through works. It's an unconditional gift that stands apart from our action. Let's now go to the next key point about grace. Grace is undeserved favor. Let's take a moment to reflect on the profound message of Romans 5, verse 8. Romans 5, verse 8, it says, "But God demonstrates His own love toward us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." It reminds us that grace isn't something we earn. It's a gift. It's favor given to us even when we don't deserve it. So while we're still sinners, Christ died for us. We don't deserve. Christ died for us. But He did it. That's because of His great love for us. And while we were still sinners, also applies that God acts before repentance or merit. So grace is shown through Christ's sacrifice, not through our human worthiness. Let's look at the next verse from the Bible, Ephesians 2, verse 4 to 5. But God, who is rich in mercy, because of His great love with which He loved us, even when we were dead in trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace, you have been saved. Undeserved grace is truly profound concept. Grace by its very nature is favor. But it goes even deeper. It's favor given freely, not earned. That verse reminds us of God's richness in mercy and His boundless love. Even when we were spiritually dead, unaware, or undeserving, He made us alive with Christ. Notice that how grace and deservingness don't quite fit together. They are mutually exclusive. We don't earn grace, it's a gift, really given. So, when we receive grace, when we were still spiritually dead, we don't deserve it. But that grace is given to us. Grace and deserving are mutually exclusive. Now let's continue to the next key point of grace. Grace is given to all men. The text from Titus 2 verse 1, as we read before, for the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men. And from Romans 3 verse 23, the well-known verse, which says that all have sinned and come short to the glory of God. Together, these two verses highlight a universal truth. Grace is available to each of us and all other people out there, regardless of our shortcomings. As we move forward, let's think about how this grace can empower us in our daily lives. Let's consider the verse again in Titus 2. The verse 11 says that for the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men. But the next verse, verse 12, says that teaching us that denying ungodliness and worldly lust, we should live soberly, righteously, and godly in the present age. So it tells us that God's grace that brings salvation to all also teaches us to live in godly manner. Grace leads us away from ungodliness and worldly desires, encouraging us to live with righteousness. So it is important to emphasize that grace of Christ does not promote disobedience. Instead, it guides us towards obedience. As highlighted in Steps to Christ, it says that the grace of Christ does not lead men to disobedience, but to obedience. As we proceed, remember that grace is not free. Grace is not free pass, to ignore our values. It is an empowering force that transforms us and enables us to align our lives with the teachings of Christ. Let's now consider this next verse in Romans 6 verse 14. For sin shall not have dominion over you, for you are not under law, but under grace. This verse speaks volumes about the transformative power of grace in our lives. And in Steps to Christ, page 11, sorry. I missed that. It's okay. We just continue with the verses. Is it? Oh, that's long. Okay. We were here before, right? Yeah. Okay. Sorry for this. In Corinthians 12 verse 19 it says, and he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly I will rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. This verse beautifully acknowledges that while our efforts are significant, but it's the grace of God that truly enables us and empowers us. Key point one here is that grace is foundational. Further in Ephesians 3, verse 20, it says, "Now to him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us." Yeah, we read this verse before. So this grace that empowers us can do like limitless. It's beyond what we can think or ask for. That's why it is very important for us to rely on this grace on our daily lives. Now, the last key point, the last but it's the most important one. Grace that transforms. In Corinthians 5:17, it says that, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. All things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new." Now let's connect these powerful words with Testimonies for the Church, Volume 7, page 144. It says, "The grace of God works works an entire transformation of character. So it emphasizes that the grace of God leads to an entire transformation of character. And this transformation isn't partial or incomplete. It is total and encompassing. Think about what it means to have your character transformed entirely by grace. It is not just about changing habits or actions. It's about a deep-rooted shift within us. As we continue, remember that this transformative grace is available to us all and guiding us to become new creations. And now let's consider the last verse and last quotes for today. It's from 1 Corinthians 15, verse 10. But by the grace of God, I am what I am, and His grace towards me was not in vain, but I labored more abundantly than they all. Yet not I, but the grace of God which was in me. And from Testimonies for the Church, volume 8, verse 312, it says there that divine grace is needed at the beginning, divine grace at every step of advance, and divine grace alone can complete the work. So from this we can conclude that grace is foundational. And the passage from Testimonies for the Church reminds us that divine grace is essential. From the very start and at every stage in our spiritual journey. And the key point too is that grace is active. It's not just a passive presence. It actively works in us and through us. Let us contemplate how grace not only transforms our lives, but continually supports our growth and labor, ensuring that our efforts are not in vain. Because grace transforms, it means that grace produces real, observable change in our life. Now the question is, if you don't see observable change in your life, what has gone wrong? Because we only can receive the grace, right? So if you truly receive that grace, observable change in your life should happen. So let's look into our heart. Don't look at other people, right? Look deep in your heart. Is there any change in my life? Have I changed? If not, if I don't see change in my life, we should come to God and try to receive that grace again, once again in your life. Because only the grace from God that can or able empower you to experience change in your life and my life. So to conclude, one sentence as a conclusion, that grace is God's unmerited favor that not only pardons sin, but actively teaches, empowers, and transforms the believers into a life of obedience and righteousness through Christ. May God bless you all.